This is a presentation of the Sports Source Digital Network, presented by Hearthside Bank.
Welcome into the Sports Source Digital Network. I'm John Pennington, joined by Ryan Callahan. Ryan, kind enough to come in and share his vast recruiting knowledge with us. He's, of course, employed by GoVols247.com. You can check it out. They do a great job on recruiting and covering the Vols in general. Free plug for you guys. I'll expect you to go over there and write something nice about the Sports Source Digital Network. Last time you were here, we talked about what's wrong with Tennessee, because typically the last couple of years, they've gotten off to a little bit of a faster start. And this year they were at number 35 and we taped it. They immediately went to number 37. Then they dropped all the way in 24/7's rankings to what, 54?
54 is the lowest I saw it.
Been a pretty good little hot streak here this past 7 days, though. Tennessee just keeps adding one player after another. They are up to number 12, I think, when we're taping this on Tuesday. Talk to me first about the guys the big names that Tennessee has brought in, and then we will look forward to the guys that folks should be paying attention to that might be the next dominoes to fall. And hopefully no dominoes will fall before this runs on Tuesday night. Yeah. Ryan, talk to me about the biggest names. Let's start there. Biggest names who've committed to the Vols since we spoke last.
Yeah, the biggest additions in the past week or so have been the two teammates at Jackson Academy in Mississippi who committed on Tuesday. TJ White, four-star linebacker. He's a top 100 player nationally. Darion Albert, his teammate, four-star defensive lineman. He's a top 200 or so player nationally. So a couple big-time additions there, obviously at positions of need. Tennessee's done a nice job at the linebacker position in the last few years. You've seen a nice kind of line of progression there from Arion Carter, a big recruiting win back in the 23 class, Edwin Spillman in the 24 class. Last year getting Jaden Perlotti, flipping him from USC, and then Jaden Harmon flipping him from Alabama. So some nice wins there that they kind of stacked some depth at the linebacker position, and this is just the latest example of that. A good pass rusher last year, kind of going to transition to more of an inside linebacker position this year at his school, but plays for a former college coach, David Duggan, who does a good job at Jackson Academy. So I think there's a lot to like about his game and just the overall skill set there. And then Darion Albert, about a 300-pound defensive lineman who can move well, and Rodney Garner obviously has a good enough track record. You got to trust his evaluations there, and obviously a highly ranked guy on top of that. So a couple nice wins there. One not quite as highly ranked for us right now, but this was a big recruiting win. Legend Bay, the athlete from Texas, Tennessee beating out Texas A&M for an in-state target for the Aggies, going down there and getting a really dynamic high school quarterback who's going to play wide receiver primarily for the Vols. One of those guys, we've seen them before, James Banks, Jawan Jennings, those types of guys who have that background at quarterback that opens up some fun trick play possibilities. You can probably use them in a return game, use them in motion, maybe even line them up in the backfield in some situations. But at quarterback, averaged 11.7 yards per carry last year, 1,900 plus rushing yards, 28 rushing touchdowns. A lot to like about a guy like that at receiver, probably in the slot primarily. So those are three of the biggest out of the 7 they've picked up over the past week.
And that was a head-to-head grab over Texas A&M, who had taken an edge rusher that Tennessee had wanted just a week or two before. So you finally got back and got a little vengeance against the Aggies, I guess. Yeah. Who else have they brought in then? Those are your 3 big ones. What about the other guys that have help them move up from all the way from 54 to number 12 in the national rankings?
Yeah, and that's certainly not to slight any of the other guys. I think some nice pickups here. Zay Anderson, an in-state athlete from Greenville High School. He's a guy with pretty good track speed. Made a lot of plays at wide receiver and has started to transition more to being a cornerback, at least in a lot of schools' eyes. Tennessee, one of the schools recruiting him as a corner. About 5'11", 6 foot, and 165. So a lean guy that fits in well at corner. And you plug in that 10.7 speed or so in the 100 meters. It looks pretty good, I think, at the cornerback position. So a lot to like there for an in-state guy who's one of the lower profile guys, frankly, among these 7, but I think a nice pickup there. You throw in Kedrick Golston, a guy with deep Georgia ties. His dad played at Georgia, former NFL defensive lineman that had a nice career.
Played for Rodney Garner.
Garner. So that gave Tennessee a natural in this one. And then Georgia was scheduled to host him on an official visit, ended up not hosting him on that visit. That kind of allowed Georgia to drop out of the race and made it a little bit easier for Tennessee to maybe win that one in the end. But beating out Virginia Tech and Rutgers in that one, and I think a guy that's got a higher ceiling than his current ratings might suggest. You never know. I didn't cover his dad come out of high school. I don't know what he looked like at 17.
Right.
But this is the guy who's 240 right now or so, and I think he could probably end up as a 270-pound defensive lineman. Got the frame to be more of that 5-technique defensive end, maybe even a 3-technique defensive tackle if he gets much bigger. So a lot to like about his game, but he's an edge rusher right now that's probably going to grow into something a little bit bigger in the future. And then on Friday, also added offensive lineman Edward Baker out of Baltimore, St. Francis Academy. That's a school where Tennessee's done a good bit of recruiting over the past few years. Idris Farouk, the safety that's probably going to start for the Vols this year, came from there. Also Dominic Bailey, probably a starter on the defensive line, has come out of there. So Tennessee's done a lot of recruiting there over the years. It pays off again here. Another nice win here. Not the highest rated guy in Tennessee's class, but you beat out Ole Miss for him. Ole Miss was kind of a late addition to that mix. Penn State was in line to get an official visit at one point, fell off the radar. Arkansas was in that one. So some decent competition there for a 3-star offensive lineman. Tennessee's been recruiting for a long time. And then also on Tuesday, after they added the teammates from Jackson Academy, one more addition in-state, Jamian Theodore, a cornerback from Baylor School in Chattanooga. Good athlete there, originally from Canada. This is the second Canadian from Baylor headed to Tennessee in this class. Gabriel Osenda, the 5-star offensive lineman, also has that same background and is at Baylor, and certainly played a role in helping Jamian Theodore, helping to convince him to follow him to Tennessee. So some nice ties there that Baylor's really create a pipeline through Canada. There's another Canadian on the way in the 27 class. Tennessee's going to be heavily involved with. David Gabriel George is a big-time running back. Tennessee already heavily involved there, but those two guys, Canadians from Baylor, now headed to Tennessee after a nice addition of Jamian Theodore. Ran a 4.44 in the 40 last year at Ohio State, so pretty good speed.
When you run through that list, leaning more defense than offense, what are we seeing? And I mean, Tennessee's defense was spectacular last year. Mm-hmm. You've got a guy in Rodney Garner who's got a great reputation. Tim Banks has done a good job here. We know that Josh Heupel has no problem landing 4- and 5-star quarterbacks. He does a great job with the quarterbacks. We've had questions about offensive linemen. You mentioned one. We've had questions about receivers. It sounds like they're converting somebody. Are we seeing that Tennessee's having an easier time selling defense right now than offense? Or is that incorrect?
I wouldn't say that, but I do think there's still some questions about how well their recruiting long-term has gone on the offensive side of the ball. Now, that being said, they've had some success at running back. Dylan Sampson was not as big time of a pickup at the time as he turned out to be.
Yeah.
So they've had some nice wins and nice evaluations that have worked out well. I think wide receiver, that's the one where the jury's still out. You got to see what Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley are going to be. Can Travis Smith and Rodarius Jackson be kind of the next guys behind them? So you've got some questions about that position. Tight end, they've had some nice hits out of the transfer portal, Miles Kitzelman, guys like that, but can they develop a high school tight end? They've got some talent in Ethan Davis and Deshaun Brame. Got some guys committed at some of those positions. And some nice guys in this class. Obviously, Faison Brandon, the headliner, but Gabriel Osenda, Carson Sneed, Tyreek King locally at wide receiver, I think a really dynamic player. So you've got some nice pickups there, but who do they get at running back? They don't have a running back in this class yet. 5-star Savion Hyder is kind of the big prize still out there, and really the only name on the board at running back. Tennessee's kind of all in on that one. It's a Tennessee-Michigan battle. That one's going to play out a while longer, but that's kind of the one that's going to answer that question to a degree. And then wide receiver, the big question out there, can they flip Tristan Keys, the 5-star LSU commitment? Miami's trying to do the same thing, so is Texas A&M. A lot of competition for him. That one's probably going to go all the way to signing day or close to it, but Tennessee hoping to land him still. So some big fish out there that will swing that one way or the other. If they miss out on those two guys, it'll be fair to ask that question still.
Okay, because that's no knock. I'm just saying, when you landed this crew, we had this conversation the first 2 years they were here, and I was saying, this is great. They're signing offensive guys. They need guys on defense.
Yeah.
Okay, now that's kind of flipped. It looks like they're having a slightly easier time hooking guys who are on the defensive side of the ball, and they're more maybe they're after a higher target on offense. Well, it's tougher to get these guys because you're in a fight with Michigan, maybe.
Well,
that is a little bit of a change. You also look at it. Heupel's system, in theory, should take a player here and put him here. That's why I was like, just load up on defense, because with this system, it's going to be hard to have a great defense. They've proven that wrong.
Yeah.
Most people with this system, this veer and shoot system, this tempo system, and it's less tempo, but most of them with this system, they don't play great defense. You've had great defense, so I just wondered, is that impacting the overall look, how people are looking at Tennessee? If you looked at it and you saw 2022, you would think that a lot of people would be saying, a lot of receivers and quarterbacks, oh my gosh, I got to get there. Quarterbacks do, but receivers, offensive linemen, and now I'm just wondering, with the defense doing so well, has it flipped to where defensive guys are saying, ooh, I want to go there, they'll put me in the pros?
I don't think it's as much that, but I do think you look at the distribution of resources, and that's such a big discussion these days with NIL and revenue sharing. So I think Tennessee, for a while, there's a concerted effort to do what you were saying, kind of build up the defense more because they came in with probably a little bit less high-level talent on defense. Yeah. They built that up, and I think there was a confidence the first couple of years at Tennessee, at least, if we get some 3- and 4-star receivers and evaluate well, we can get by there. It's defense where we need the high-level talent. Now I think you've seen them go more all in on high-level talent. The Mike Matthews, the David Sanders. So I think there's been an adjustment there. Now we just got to see if the long-term results are going to pay off in that way.
Well, and I think that, again, I was begging them to do that those first couple of years. So the fact that they did it, obviously, I think it's brilliant. Yeah. But it certainly paid off. I mean, you've had 2 really good years where your defense has carried you. Last year, it carried you all the way to a playoff, along with Dylan Sampson, but it was your defense that got you there. So that's good. Let me ask you this. It's a little off topic. We've talked about this. We've touched on this barely off air, but I just want to ask, when you're building a team these days, I don't know how they do it, because it used to be you could look at your big board and say, all right, in 3 years, he'll be gone, so we'll need to recruit this position. We need an inside linebacker 3 years from now. We're going to need a new safety 2 years from now. Now it's all over the board. Yeah. You can go get this person out of the portal. Somebody can go grab that person out of the portal from your roster. How then are you just grabbing the best recruits you can? Is that just it? Just grab anybody you can. How much long-term planning is there in terms of roster building that can even go on now? That's my question, because it would seem it's kind of an old school way of thinking. I don't know that you can do it anymore. Can you?
I think you can, and you have to still, if you're doing it Josh Heupel's way, which they've made it clear they want to build through high school recruiting primarily and only supplement through the portal. That's not like what some teams do. So I think they've taken still more of that approach where you're and to that point, with NIL, with all the things that you're trying to use your resources the best way possible. You don't want to invest in some, you don't want to put a lot of money into a guy who's not going to play till year 3 necessarily, because that's the challenge too. So you're trying to find guys who are the right fit. If you're bringing in a guy who's going to need some time to develop, it needs to be a guy that ideally is not going to break the bank while he's developing. So you've got to kind of find the right fit. And I think you are looking for long-term developmental pieces in some cases. But to your point, it's hard to really build a depth chart for 3 years down the road because so much is going to change between now and then. You're just trying to find, okay, we took it's kind of more like this. We took a big-time quarterback last year. Maybe we don't spend quite as much on that position next year. It's you picking your spots less so than mapping things out exactly what it's going to look like 3 years down the road.
Yeah, I mean, the days of having a giant wall with the magnets on there and you're able to just slide guys around. The problem is, even if they say we're going to build through high school recruiting and we're not going to go all in on, we're not going to be Ole Miss in terms of portal spending.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes if everybody leaves, you're forced into that. So everybody else doesn't play by that rule. So the idea that we're going to handle it this way, so we don't really have to worry about the portal as much, well, unless your quarterback asks for more money at the end of spring practice.
Right.
And you're stuck. So you've got to pick your poison. They all do. And I just think that's another reason, if I'm a coach these days, I'm pulling my hair out. Let's talk about, though, who's coming next. The biggest names that are ahead for the Vols, names that you think folks should be paying attention to, guys that the Vols are after, some dominoes who could fall over the next few weeks.
Yeah, so some of the names we know, guys deciding soon. Darrell Rivers, a defensive lineman from the Atlanta area. He's one of Tennessee's newer targets on the defensive line. Didn't get an offer till early May, but has quickly become pretty important to Tennessee. About 6'5", 270, good-sized guy that can play inside or outside on the defensive line. But Tennessee looks like the favorite there. Mississippi State probably been the main competition down the stretch. So he's announcing on Friday, 4th of July. That's his plan at this point. Next week, a couple of scheduled announcements. In-state cornerback Javonte Smith out of Jackson, Tennessee. That's been a primarily Tennessee-Arkansas battle down the stretch. Missouri and West Virginia also involved, but Tennessee got the last official visit, shaping up pretty well for the Vols. And then Joel Combe, a safety from Cal High School in Marietta, Georgia, down the Atlanta area. Been high on Tennessee for a while. He's planning to announce on July 9. I think Javonte Smith is July 8. So those two should be sometime next week. And then beyond that, we're still sort of waiting on some announcement dates from some guys. But one we're watching closely that's a big-time target, Braden Rouse, a 4-star linebacker, top 100 player nationally. It's a big-time battle. Tennessee's mainly been worried about Texas, I think, down the stretch. But Michigan and Alabama also got official visits. So Really big time battle there for a guy that Tennessee's been in good shape with for a long time, but you don't get a guy like that without a fight, and there can be some twists and turns in those types of races, so we'll see if Tennessee can land him. He's been targeting an announcement sometime in the first half of this month, so could happen soon. Might drag out a little bit longer, we'll have to see, but that's one to maybe watch over the next couple weeks. And then the big name out there everyone's kind of wondering about, this one may take a little longer. 5-star running back Savion Hyder, mentioned him a minute ago. That's one that's a Tennessee-Michigan battle again, and it's looking like it may play out into August or potentially even September. We're still waiting to hear something publicly from him. He's not said anything in interviews recently, so we don't know what exactly his plans are, but a lot of talk behind the scenes that this is one that's not going to end this month, might even carry on into the season. So does it end in August? Does it end in September? We'll see, but Tennessee and Michigan both seem to be kind of all in on him, the number one running back in the country. Tennessee's, they've landed some good running backs, Jalen Wright, Dylan Sampson, but no one at this level coming out of high school in a few years. So this would be a huge win for Tennessee, but going to have to fight tooth and nail to beat out Michigan.
All right, give me the ballpark. Let's say Tennessee gets a lot of the guys they want, but not all of them. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to say they get everybody. At the same time, I don't want to say they lose on everybody. So let's say kind of what you would expect. Just kind of roll the dice. Let's go. They nail a lot of the guys, but not all of them. Okay. Yeah. Where could this class finish? And right now they're number 12. Mm-hmm. Tennessee typically falls between 10 and 15 every year, whether Derek Dooley's recruiting, Butch Jones is recruiting, and it's just what it is, 10 to 15. But inside the SEC, and granted, Heupel's system is supposed to lift a lower level player and equalize it a little bit. Mm-hmm. So last year, again, I don't know that you had the offense to make the playoff, and you made them. So. Yeah. And for all of the times we talked about it wasn't a beautiful offense, they were still top 15 in points, top 15 in yardage. So It looked bad compared to 2022. It didn't look bad compared to a lot of teams out there. Mm-hmm. Total numbers. All right. Where are they going to be inside the SEC? That's the key. Any chance they get up? I mean, you got the Texas, the Georgias. Alabama has been down, but I'm not going to write off them until I see them with a number 30 class.
They've had a nice summer run. They've heated up. They've got 3 5-stars in their class. So,
and that's since we've met the last time they've added guys. So is Tennessee showing you any signs that they're going to be up there recruiting with Texas, Georgia, Alabama this year?
Probably not quite at that level this year, and I think that's the frustration for fans. Now, here's the thing you got to keep in mind. We've talked about this before, but there have been, Tennessee has emerged as a college football playoff contender under Josh Heupel. That's been an impressive development. They've done it quick. They got it there quicker than we ever thought they would. Yeah. They've done this during a period of massive transition in college football, and some of those transitions have benefited them. Well, now your fans are kind of hoping, okay, you made the playoff, now it's time to take a jump. Now it's time to get there in the top 5 in recruiting, and it doesn't happen that quickly a lot of times. College football is a little bit different from college baseball and basketball. College basketball, one player can transform a team for a couple years. College baseball, it takes the right team kind of cycling up with veterans to make it work, and you can fall right back down the next year. College football, the Georgias and Alabamas and Ohio States, it takes a while for them to kind of take a step back a lot of times. So they're gonna still be up there. Texas has established themselves as a power under Steve Sarkisian. So LSU is going to still recruit well. There's a lot of teams, and now with NIL and now revenue sharing, whatever that's going to look like, it's become such a competitive landscape that they're taking some steps, but you got to keep putting guys in the NFL, keep making the playoff, keep getting in that discussion more before you can really establish yourself as a top 5 or even top 7 recruiting program probably. So I think you're probably looking at somewhere like where they were last year, probably a top 10, but maybe more likely top 15 class this year, and we'll see exactly where they end up. It's going to depend on, can you get a Savion Hyder? Can you get a Tristan Keys? Can you get 5-star offensive lineman Darius Gray, who's going to announce later this year? So they've got some battles like that can change things, but a lot's going to be depending on just how top-heavy this class can get.
If you're wanting to be a team that makes it to Atlanta, makes it to the SEC championship game, there's no longer the benefit of playing in an easy division. That's out. You have to literally be one of the top 2 teams in the conference. Last year, as bad as Tennessee's offense looked at times, again, statistically it wasn't that bad. I understand they beat up a lot of bad teams, but that's what a lot of teams do. Everybody's got 3 pumpkins on their schedule. Yeah. But you look at what they did. They were the 3rd best team in the SEC last year. Still, if you're going to get to Atlanta, at some point, you're going to need to start recruiting like the teams that make Atlanta. Texas, Georgia, Alabama. You got to get up there.
And at a certain point, it comes down to asset how you divide your assets. If it's going to be essentially a salary cap system, which is what revenue sharing is set up to be, if people aren't going to go around that with other means of, and they still may do that, but if they're not going to go around that, it's how well do you spend your money. So that's even more of a challenge. But I mean, Tennessee, they can make some strides. I think this is why this season is important for Tennessee. You got to keep winning while your schedule's kind of easy. You go to a 9-game SEC schedule, it just gets that much harder to stay up there.
Well, the tough thing there is you've got so many question marks. This is a rebuilding year in a lot of ways, especially with Nico gone and you're having to start a quarterback that you've known for 3 months.
Yep.
It's a difficult year to say it's a important year.
But I think it's not a year you want to step back to 8-4 because then you might end up having a hard time getting right back to where you were this year.
That's Ryan Callahan. Folks, if you like this kind of conversation, then be sure to hit the like button. That tells other people that, hey, this is a cool channel. Subscribe. Ring the bell. That way you'll be notified whenever we put up one of these clips, and we've done 300 and something in just 5 months, so we're a lot of clips. And then leave us a comment as well. If you have concerns about Tennessee's recruiting, if you like Tennessee's recruiting, if you think I'm too negative about Tennessee's recruiting, that's fine. Tell us what you think. Be part of our community here at the Sports Source Digital Network. We'll see you next time.